My sister-in-law always mocked me for living off my husband Matthew. After his untimely death, she took everything, kicked us out, and smirked with satisfaction. But she didn't expect her ex-husband, my lawyer, to happily dismantle her plans and fight for what was rightfully ours. The weight of grief pressed against my chest like an iron slab. My fingers trembled as I clutched the single white rose, its petals soft against my fingertips, a stark contrast to the cold reality before me. Matthew's coffin stood draped in a deep black cloth, surrounded by wreaths and flowers, the scent of lilies heavy in the air. Mourners whispered condolences, their voices hushed, their eyes filled with pity. But I barely heard them. My world had collapsed the moment Matthew took his last breath, and I was still trapped beneath the wreckage. Then, amid the sea of black-clad mourners, I saw her, Victoria. She stood at the edge of the crowd, her arms crossed over her chest, her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile but wasn't grief either. It was something else, something colder. I felt my stomach twist as she walked toward me, each step deliberate, slow, calculated. The woman had always despised me, but today she looked victorious. She leaned in, her voice low enough that only I could hear. "You won't be staying in his house much longer," she murmured, her tone laced with smug amusement. My breath hitched. "What?" She straightened, tilting her head slightly. "Oh, sweetheart. You didn't really think Matthew left everything to you, did you?" A chill ran through me, colder than the wind that rustled through the cemetery. My voice cracked. Victoria chuckled, the sound sending ice down my spine. "You'll see soon enough." And with that she walked away, leaving me standing there, stunned, my heart pounding. The service continued, but I couldn't focus. Victoria's words echoed in my mind, gnawing at me. What did she mean? Matthew had always made sure I was taken care of. We'd built a life together, shared everything. He wouldn't have left me with nothing. But as I stood there, gripping the rose so tightly that the stem bent beneath my fingers, I couldn't shake the feeling that my nightmare was only just beginning. As the funeral ended, people began to drift away, murmuring soft condolences before leaving me alone in the crisp afternoon air. My son Ethan clung to my side, his small fingers tightening around my hand. He didn't fully understand what was happening, only that his father was gone. I knelt beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Come on, sweetheart," I whispered. "Let's go home." Home. The word felt fragile in my mouth, like something that could shatter at any moment. Victoria was the last to leave, lingering by her car watching me. Her smirk was still there, that same cold satisfaction curling at the corners of her lips. Then she got into her sleek black car and drove off, leaving a trail of dust in her wake. I exhaled sharply. Whatever she had planned, I would not let her destroy the last pieces of my life. But I had no idea how wrong I was. The following day, exhaustion clung to my bones as I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the half-empty cup of coffee in front of me. I hadn't slept. I couldn't. The house felt too empty without Matthew, too silent. A sharp knock at the door startled me. My heart leaped into my throat. I set my cup down and made my way to the door, peering through the peephole. A man in a pressed suit stood outside, a briefcase in one hand, a stack of papers in the other. Unease slithered through me. I opened the door slowly. "Can I help you?" The man offered a polite but firm nod. "Mrs. Carter?" I hesitated, then nodded. "My name is Robert Hayes. I'm here on behalf of your late husband's estate." My fingers tightened on the doorknob. "Estate." He handed me the papers. "Per legal documentation, the assets of Mr. Matthew Carter have been transferred to his next of kin." Confusion flickered through me. I'm his wife." Mr. Hayes gave me a look of practiced sympathy. "I'm aware, ma'am. But the documents indicate that Mr. Carter's estate has been legally transferred to Victoria Carter." The words hit me like a slap. "What?" I grabbed the papers, scanning them, my eyes darting over the dense legal jargon. My hands began to shake as I reached the final page. Victoria's name was listed as the primary beneficiary. Not mine. Not Ethan's. Victoria's. My pulse pounded in my ears. This has to be a mistake. Matthew wouldn't do this. He wouldn't. Mr. Hayes exhaled softly, adjusting his tie. The documents were signed and filed before his passing. As of now, legally, Victoria Carter is the rightful owner of all assets, including the house you currently reside in. I stumbled back a step, my breath hitching. You're telling me I have nothing? He hesitated. I'm afraid so. A lump formed in my throat. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. But then, as if summoned by my devastation, a familiar voice cut through the air. Well, looks like you finally got the news. I turned sharply to see Victoria standing at the edge of my driveway, her arms folded across her chest, that same smirk tugging at her lips. Fury and panic clashed inside me. You did this, I whispered, my voice shaking. You stole everything. Victoria let out a soft laugh. Stole? Please. The law is the law, darling. My brother made sure his estate was handled properly before he died. Can't argue with legal documentation now, can we? Tears burned my eyes. Matthew wouldn't do this. Victoria shrugged. Believe what you want. But you have 1 week to pack your things and get out. This house. This life. It's mine now. She turned on her heel and walked away, her heels clicking against the pavement. I stood frozen, my entire body trembling. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a war. Thrown to the wolves. Over the next few days, reality settled in like a slow, creeping poison. The house that once held laughter and love now felt like a tomb. The bank accounts, our bank accounts, were drained. Every attempt I made to fight back was met with cold, impassable legal walls. Victoria had planned this. She had waited. And now she had won. The final blow came when movers arrived, armed with papers stating they were legally authorized to remove my belongings. As they packed away my life, my son clung to my leg, his small body trembling. Mommy, where are we going? I swallowed hard, running a hand through his hair. I don't know, baby. I didn't have an answer. Because for the first time in my life I had nowhere to go. And as I stood there watching Victoria's smug face from the doorway, I made a silent vow. She thinks she's won. But she has no idea what's coming. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Boxes were stacked against the walls, my entire life reduced to neatly packed memories. Every framed picture of Matthew and me had been taken down, as if our years together had been erased overnight. The movers worked mechanically, carrying out furniture, books, clothes, everything I had built with my husband. My son, Ethan, sat curled up on the couch, his little fingers gripping his favorite stuffed animal, his eyes round with confusion. Mommy, why are they taking our stuff? I forced a smile even as my throat tightened. We're just moving, sweetheart. He frowned, not convinced, but didn't press further. His innocence made my heart ache. Victoria watched the scene unfold from the hallway, her arms crossed over her chest, a satisfied smirk on her face. I'd hurry if I were you. You've only got a few hours left before the locks get changed. Rage boiled beneath my skin, but I swallowed it down. I couldn't afford to lose control. Not in front of Ethan, and certainly not in front of her. I turned away, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles ached. I needed answers. I needed help. I needed to fight back. A forgotten will or a stolen one. I spent the next few hours in a whirlwind of calls, attorneys, banks, even old family friends, searching for any loophole, any shred of evidence that Victoria had lied. But the response was the same. The will is legally binding. There are no other records of an updated will. There's nothing we can do. The words sank into me like stones, dragging me down into the cold depths of reality. But something didn't add up. Matthew had always been meticulous about our future. He had assured me, multiple times, that he had secured everything in a will. He wanted to make sure that if anything ever happened, Ethan and I would be protected. So where was that will? Had Matthew lied to me? Or had someone made sure that I never saw it? A sickening thought took root in my mind. Victoria. She had always resented me, treated me like I was an intruder in her family. If anyone had the motive to destroy an updated will, it was her. But proving it would be another matter entirely. Desperation pushed me toward Matthew's lawyer, the same one who had supposedly handled the estate transfer. His office was tucked inside a towering glass building, cold and sterile. When I arrived, the receptionist barely spared me a glance before instructing me to wait. An hour passed. Then another. By the time I was finally led into the lawyer's office, frustration was simmering beneath my grief. The man behind the desk, Robert Hayes, was the same one who had handed me those devastating papers. He looked up with a forced, sympathetic smile. Mrs. Carter, I assume you're here about the estate. I sat down, my hands gripping the arms of the chair. I need to know if my husband had an updated will. One that named me as the beneficiary. His expression didn't change, but I caught the flicker of hesitation in his eyes. I'm afraid there was no such document on file. I narrowed my gaze. That doesn't make sense. He told me he had one. He was very clear about it. Hayes sighed, adjusting the papers on his desk. I understand this is a difficult time for you, but I can only go by the documents that exist. If another will had been made, it would have been filed through legal channels. I studied him, noting the tightness in his shoulders, the way his fingers tapped nervously against the desk. He wasn't just dismissing me. He was hiding something. Did Victoria get to you? I asked, my voice low, steady. His tapping stopped. His face remained neutral, but the answer was clear in the way he didn't react. She had. I leaned forward. Look me in the eye and tell me Matthew never updated his will. Hayes swallowed, shifting in his chair. Mrs. Carter, Tell me. For the briefest second, guilt flickered across his face. But then he masked it with professionalism. I'm sorry. I can't help you. My stomach twisted. Victoria had covered her tracks well. Leaving the office, I felt numb. My worst fears were becoming reality. Victoria had not only taken everything, she had likely destroyed the one thing that could have saved me and Ethan from this nightmare. And she was enjoying every second of it. Later that evening, as I drove past my old home, I saw lights glowing warmly through the windows. The home that had once been mine was now occupied by her. I pulled over, my fingers clenching around the steering wheel. Through the glass, I saw Victoria, lounging in what used to be my living room, a glass of wine in her hand, her laughter spilling through the night. Anger surged through me, but I swallowed it down. I needed a plan. And I knew exactly who could help me. That night, as I tucked Ethan into bed at the cheap motel we were now forced to call home, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A familiar voice filled the line. Heard you're in some trouble. My heart skipped a beat. Lucas. Victoria's ex-husband. A man I had barely spoken to in years. Victoria's been bragging, he continued, about how she played you. Thought you might need a friend. I exhaled sharply, gripping the phone tighter. Do you know something? Pause. Then. Meet me tomorrow. We need to talk. The next morning, I met Lucas at a small cafe on the outskirts of town. He looked the same as I remembered, tall, well-dressed, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He sipped his coffee, watching me carefully. I'm going to cut to the chase, he said. Victoria always wanted control. She was furious when Matthew married you. Thought you stole her brother away. She had the money, the connections, and she used them. I swallowed the lump in my throat. She destroyed the will, didn't she? Lucas nodded. Most likely. But proving it? That's the hard part. I clenched my fist. Then I'll do whatever it takes. I won't let her win. A slow smile spread across Lucas's face. That's what I was hoping you'd say. He leaned in, his voice dropping. I know a few things about Victoria. Things that could ruin her. Hope flared in my chest for the first time in days. Victoria had thought she won. But she had underestimated me. And she had definitely underestimated her ex-husband. This fight was far from over. Lucas leaned back in his chair, stirring his coffee with deliberate slowness. His sharp eyes studied me as if measuring how far I was willing to go. The cafe around us hummed with quiet conversation, the occasional clatter of cups breaking the stillness. You're sure you're ready for this? He asked finally, setting his spoon aside. I met his gaze without hesitation. I don't have a choice. Victoria took everything. If there's a way to expose her, I want to know it. He smirked, almost as if he found my determination amusing. Good. Because this isn't just about money, sweetheart. Victoria has a lot of skeletons in her closet. I leaned forward. Like what? Lucas exhaled, rubbing his jaw. For starters, she's no stranger to legal manipulation. When we were married, I saw how she operated. Bribing, blackmailing, forging documents. She didn't just take Matthew's estate by accident. She planned this. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I had always known Victoria was cruel, but this was something else. How do we prove it? I asked, gripping the edge of the table. Lucas's smirk widened. Oh, we'll get there. But first, let's dig into her past. Lucas was meticulous. Over the next few days he compiled everything he could find on Victoria. Business dealings, old financial records, past legal disputes. What we discovered made my stomach churn. Victoria had a pattern. She had always found ways to take what she wanted, leaving destruction in her wake. There was an old fraud case buried in sealed records from years ago. She had once taken control of a family inheritance, not hers, by manipulating legal documents, much like she had done with Matthew's estate. She should have been in prison, I murmured, flipping through the papers Lucas had printed out. How did she get away with all of this? She's careful, Lucas admitted. And ruthless. He tapped a highlighted section on one of the pages. But even the best make mistakes. My heart pounded as I read the words. Undeclared financial transactions. Wire transfers from offshore accounts. Lucas leaned closer. This means she's been hiding money. Money she didn't want anyone to know about. A slow realization crept over me. If we can prove she was siphoning funds while handling Matthew's estate, then we can unravel everything, Lucas finished. I swallowed, nerves twisting in my stomach. We had the thread. Now we just had to pull. But there was still one pressing question. What happened to Matthew's real will? If Victoria had forged or destroyed it, there had to be evidence somewhere. One name kept surfacing. Robert Hayes, the lawyer who had handled the estate transfer. I don't trust him, I admitted. When I confronted him, he looked nervous. Lucas nodded. He's hiding something. And I have a feeling he's not doing it for free. The plan was simple. Catch Hayes off guard, pressure him into revealing the truth. I took a deep breath as we stepped into his law office. My palms were sweaty, my pulse quick. The receptionist greeted us stiffly, glancing between Lucas and me. Do you have an appointment? We won't take much of his time, Lucas said smoothly, flashing a practiced lawyer's smile. She hesitated before disappearing into the back. Moments later, Hayes emerged, his suit crisp but his face tense. I already told you there is no updated will. Lucas leaned against the desk, crossing his arms. And yet we both know that's a lie. Hayes stiffened. We're not here to play games, I said firmly. I know Victoria got to you. I know she paid you to make Matthew's will disappear. His jaw clenched. You can't prove that. Lucas smiled. Not yet. But here's the thing. If we do prove it, you'll go down with her. A bead of sweat trickled down Hayes's temple. He looked over his shoulder, lowering his voice. You don't understand. She owns people. If I talk, I lose everything. My hands curled into fists. You mean like how she took everything from me? Hayes hesitated. His gaze darted around the office, as if the walls themselves were listening. Finally, he exhaled sharply. I don't have the original will anymore. But, he hesitated, then pulled a folder from his drawer. This is all I have left. I grabbed it, flipping it open. Inside was a copy, a scanned version of Matthew's real will. I choked back a gasp. There, in black and white, was my name. Not Victoria's. She doesn't know I kept this, Hayes muttered. If she finds out. She won't, Lucas assured him. As long as you stay out of our way. Hayes swallowed hard, nodding. We had what we needed. Back in the car, I stared down at the document, my hands shaking. Lucas drove in silence before finally speaking. This is it. The proof that Victoria had no legal claim. I let out a shaky breath. She won't go down without a fight. Oh, I'm counting on it, Lucas said. The more she struggles, the harder she falls. I looked out the window as the city blurred past. Victoria had spent her life manipulating, stealing, and destroying people to get what she wanted. But this time she had gone too far. And she was about to pay for it. That night, as I lay awake in the motel room, I thought about my next move. Victoria thought she had won. She thought I would disappear quietly. But she underestimated me. She underestimated us. Lucas had a plan. One that would turn her own schemes against her. The missing will was only the beginning. Because now we weren't just taking back what was mine. We were about to dismantle everything she had built. And I was going to watch her world burn. I sat in the courthouse hallway, the cold wooden bench beneath me doing little to steady my nerves. The air smelled of old paper and faintly of coffee, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. The folder in my lap, the copy of Matthew's real will, felt like a weapon, a ticking bomb that would finally obliterate Victoria's web of lies. Lucas sat beside me calm as ever, scrolling through his notes. His confidence was reassuring, but my hands still trembled. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. The heavy courtroom doors swung open and a clerk called my name. It's time. I stood on shaky legs, inhaled deeply and stepped forward. The courtroom was packed. Spectators filled the gallery, reporters whispered among themselves, and at the center of it all sat her. Victoria. She wore a pristine navy blue suit, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. To anyone else she looked composed, dignified. But I saw through it. The stiffness in her shoulders, the way her fingers tapped against the table. She was nervous. Good. Her lawyer, an older man with graying hair, shot me a glance before turning back to his client. Victoria leaned in, whispering furiously in his ear. Lucas nudged me. She's scared. I swallowed and nodded. She should be. The judge entered and the room fell silent. Court is now in session, the bailiff announced. I clenched my fists under the table. This was it. Lucas stood first, walking to the center of the room with the ease of someone who had done this 100 times before. He addressed the judge with crisp professionalism. Your Honor, today we bring forward evidence that the transfer of Matthew Carter's estate to Victoria Carter was fraudulent. We have a copy of the original will, which clearly names my client, his wife, as the rightful heir. Gasps murmured through the gallery. I kept my expression blank, but inside my heart pounded. Victoria's lawyer stood. Objection, Your Honor. We have no proof that this so-called will is legitimate. Lucas barely blinked. We anticipated that argument. He walked to our table, picking up a separate folder. We conducted an independent forensic analysis. The signature on this document is authentic, and records show that it was filed, but mysteriously vanished shortly after Matthew's death. The judge peered over his glasses. Vanished? Lucas nodded. Yes, Your Honor. And the person responsible for handling that document was none other than attorney Robert Hayes. All eyes turned to the other side of the courtroom. Victoria's face paled. The doors opened again and Robert Hayes stepped inside. He looked uneasy, adjusting his tie as he made his way to the witness stand. Victoria's lawyer immediately protested. Your Honor, Mr. Hayes has no relevant testimony. The judge held up a hand. I'll decide that. Mr. Hayes, you may proceed. Hayes cleared his throat, avoiding Victoria's glare. I handled the estate after Matthew Carter's passing, he began. At the time I was approached by Victoria Carter, who offered me financial compensation to ensure that this, he gestured to the folder Lucas held, never saw the light of day. A stunned silence filled the room. My nails dug into my palms. This was the moment Victoria's world unraveled. Victoria shot up from her seat. He's lying, she shrieked, her composure cracking. The judge slammed his gavel. Miss Carter, sit down. She did, but I could see the panic in her eyes. Lucas turned back to Hayes. And just to clarify, did you accept this compensation? Hayes swallowed. Yes. Murmurs rippled through the room. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. We had her. Victoria's lawyer scrambled, flipping through his papers, trying to salvage what was left. Your Honor, my client maintains that she was the rightful heir based on existing documentation. Lucas interrupted. Which was manipulated. He gestured toward Hayes. We have a witness who confessed under oath, proving fraud. Additionally, we've uncovered financial records showing that Victoria Carter siphoned funds from the estate for personal use. He turned to me. Would you like to explain what you found? I stood, my voice steady despite the adrenaline racing through my veins. Victoria Carter drained the estate accounts, funneling money into offshore accounts. She sold off my husband's assets, including his car, business shares, and personal items, all while leaving my son and me homeless. Gasps filled the room again. The judge nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. I've heard enough. He turned to Victoria, who was now visibly shaking. Miss Carter, do you have anything to say for yourself? She opened her mouth, but no words came. She knew it was over. The judge picked up his gavel. Based on the presented evidence, this court finds that Victoria Carter acted fraudulently. The estate rightfully belongs to the legal heir, Mrs. Carter. The gavel struck. Case closed. The courtroom erupted. Some people cheered, others whispered in shock. I stood frozen for a moment, barely processing the victory. Then Lucas nudged me, grinning. Told you we'd win. I exhaled shakily. It was over. Victoria sat motionless, her face drained of color. She had lost. Everything she had stolen was being ripped from her grasp. And I had finally reclaimed what was mine. As I walked past her, she whispered, "You'll regret this." I paused, then met her gaze. "No, Victoria. You will." Then I walked out into the fresh air where my son was waiting. The storm had finally passed. As I stepped out of the courthouse, the weight that had pressed against my chest for months finally began to lift. The air felt fresher, the sky somehow brighter. The victory was real. I had won. My son Ethan sat on the courthouse steps, his small legs swinging as he waited. The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up. "Mommy!" He ran toward me and I knelt down, catching him in my arms. I held him tightly, inhaling the soft scent of his hair, letting the moment sink in. We were free. Lucas stepped beside me, hands in his pockets, his usual smirk in place. "Not bad, huh?" I looked up at him, still breathless from the rush of it all. "Not bad." I let out a soft laugh, shaking my head. "You helped me take down a monster." His smirk deepened. "Well, I do love a good downfall. Especially when it involves my ex-wife." For the first time in months I smiled. Really smiled. Victoria was ruined. Watching her fall. As we walked to the parking lot, I noticed a figure standing near a black car. Victoria. She was a mess. The woman who once held her head high, who smirked at my pain, now looked like a ghost of herself. Her perfectly pressed suit was wrinkled, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She wasn't the queen anymore. I stopped in my tracks, meeting her gaze across the lot. She took a step toward me, her expression twisted with something I couldn't quite place. Anger, desperation, disbelief. "You think this is over?" Her voice was hoarse, but the venom remained. Lucas let out a low chuckle beside me. "Oh, I'm very sure it is." Victoria ignored him, her eyes locked onto mine. "You took everything from me." I tilted my head. "You mean the things you stole?" Her breath hitched, and for the first time I saw something flicker behind her rage, fear. He knew. She knew this was just the beginning of her downfall. I stepped forward, my voice calm but firm. "You did this to yourself, Victoria. You destroyed your own life." She swallowed hard, glancing away. For the first time she had nothing to say. And that was the real victory. A new home, a fresh start. The next week was a whirlwind. The house was mine again. The legal process moved fast now that Victoria was out of the picture. I walked through the front door, the familiar scent of home wrapping around me like a long-lost embrace. Ethan ran through the house, his laughter filling the empty space. It had been too long since I'd heard that sound. I ran my fingers over the furniture, the walls, the memories that Victoria had tried to steal. But she hadn't won. I had. That night I stood on the balcony watching the city lights flicker in the distance. The weight of everything, the loss, the fight, the victory, settled over me. I wasn't just reclaiming a house. I was reclaiming my life. Ethan clutched my hand as we walked into his school the next morning. "Mommy, does this mean we don't have to move again?" His voice was small, hopeful. I knelt beside him, brushing his curls away from his face. "That's exactly what it means, baby. We're home now. For good." His eyes shone with relief and he threw his arms around my neck. "I love you, Mommy." Tears burned my eyes, but they were different now. Not from pain but from peace. Victoria had tried to take everything from us. But she had failed. Ethan's future was safe. And that was all that mattered. Later that evening I met Lucas at a quiet bar. He ordered a whiskey, I got a glass of wine. "To your victory," he said, raising his glass. I clinked mine against his. "Our victory." He smirked. "You're stronger than you think, you know." I exhaled, letting the words settle over me. I didn't think I had it in me. But now, I know better. He nodded, taking a sip of his drink. "What now?" I looked out the window, the city stretching beyond us. "Now I live. For myself. For Ethan." Lucas studied me for a moment, then smiled. "I think you'll do just fine." And for the first time in a long time I believed him. Closure and moving forward. That night I returned home and stood in front of the mirror. The woman staring back at me was different. Stronger. Wiser. Unbreakable. I had fought for my family, my son, my future. And I had won. Victoria had taken her best shot. But I was still standing. And I always would be.